This is social media and mental health. And this today's presentation is all about how social media can potentially impact your mental health, the positives of social media, how you can recognize social media addiction. Yes, that is a thing. The effects of social media on children and adolescents. With that, I am going to turn it over to our presenter for today. He is an incredible partner for the city of Detroit. Mr. Mike Jeffries is a program director with HMSA, Health Management Systems of America. And with that, Mike, I will turn it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that great introduction. And thank you to everybody who is showing up to be here today. This is a pretty important topic, and it's something that is honestly on the tops of a lot of people's minds. It's hard to have a week go by without hearing something about like social media or AI or other aspects of technology that are sort of making their way into our lives in ways that we might not have originally expected, but also in ways that might not always be healthy. And so, one of the things that we want to talk about today and really focus on is reminding people that when we're looking at tools like social media and things like this, is that at the end of the day, that is what they are. They are tools. They can be used for good, they can be used for bad. We're going to talk about a lot of those things, and we're going to talk about a lot of different effects of social media that can have on you mentally, some things that can happen on you physically, how to watch out for those things, and then also how the ever-present aspect of social media is shaping a lot of our lives, a lot of our conversations, and even affecting a lot of our kids' lives too. And whenever I talk about kids, I always like to bring up something because sometimes if you don't have kids yourself and we get into that section, you could be like, okay, like, this part doesn't really apply to me. But honestly, it kind of does because those kids that are now like teenagers that are like in college right now, they are going to be rapidly entering the workforce and slowly taking over positions. And many of the ways that they interact with the world and society and other people come from social media. So kind of getting a little bit of a background about how kids are being like affected and influencing with social media is something that you can really kind of understand for your work life and your personal life, whether you have kids or you don't. Now, before we jump in, I do want to mention one other thing. I'm going to be asking probably a lot of different participation questions, so we always want to make sure that we're using that chat function as you want to. I also have made sure that my chat function is not available for other people to be viewed and my screen is being shared. So if you have a question that you would like to ask anonymously and you don't want to put your name on it, or you have a comment that you want to, please just make sure you're messaging me directly. I will make sure that I read that without putting your name in front of it because at the end of the day, the goal of the presentation is to make sure that we get as much information as possible for you and that we get any questions that we have answered. At the end of the day, we will have more than enough time for a Q&A, so you don't have to worry about kind of like saving those questions. But at any point in time, if a question pops up, make use of that chat function, and we're going to be able to kind of go through and get everybody's questions answered throughout the course of today's presentation. So, as we talked about, there's a lot of different things we're going to be covering about today. We're going to be going over a lot of the history and statistics around social media, the downsides and positives to social media, how it affects kids, like I mentioned, and then also ways that we can manage that social media addiction. So, let's begin by asking a very simple question. What is social media? And I want to hear everybody in the chat. When I say social media, when you hear that term that comes up in a news article or a story or just in general conversation, what do you first think of when you hear about social media? Like what pops in your mind? What platforms are you thinking of? What kind of interactions are you having? So do me a favor, go in the chat and if you could type in like what you think of when you hear that term social media. A couple people are kind of saying some things like Facebook and some other types of platforms. Those are really, really great. Those are really, really common. I'm always just kind of interested to see the different vibe because also one of the things is that many ways when we're looking at social media, it can be affected a lot of by your generation and when you got into social media. So a lot of people are talking about different things with like, Instagram, Facebook, podcasts even. I like that we threw out podcasts there. Another one that I saw that from AJ that was really, really good is like a virtual way to engage with many different folks and different people all across the globe, digital apps used for socializing entertainment. And all of those things are awesome. And it's interesting because people, when I ask this question, will throw out anything from like Instagram and Facebook. To some people will go old school and they'll say things like MySpace or LiveJournal. Other people will say things like YouTube, like TikTok, like WhatsApp, a bunch of other different options that are out there. At the end of the day, one thing we want to kind of remind people is that any type of platform or app where we are looking around and we are able to interact with other people is technically social media. So as people mentioned the obvious ones like Snapchat and TikTok and Instagram, another one to think about would be like LinkedIn. That's a valid form of social media. Most people think about it for work, but you can post things, you can comment to people, you can reply to people, even things like comment sections under news stories. So if you're on a news website and there's an opportunity for you to comment on something, that's kind of social media. Similarly, if we have different forums, if we have Reddit, if we have other different groups, even if it's just for something that is a website that is highly specific to a very niche interest, that can be social media. Because at the end of the day, anytime that you are interacting with somebody and they can comment on your things and comment on your back, and you can share content, that is a valid form of social media. So it can be a little bit more all encompassing than many people think. And when we look at that statistics, when we understand social media, we can understand how prevalent social media is basically in everybody's life. As of the end of 2023, the United States is the third largest social media audience around the world after China and India, respectively. And we have significantly smaller populations than both China and India. So the fact that we are third in that group is basically where we would kind of expect to be during that point in time. The United States is home to currently over 302 million active social media users, and this has a penetration rate of over 91% amongst adults. That number of active social media users and penetration rate basically goes up every single week by small amounts because the younger generations that are coming into adulthood have been born and raised under social media. And so this is such an important aspect of their life that it is just something that to them is not new. It's not something that is different. It is literally a foundational part of their life. This penetration rate that I mentioned is basically expected to go up between around 4 to 5% within the next 2 years. So basically, by mid 2026, we are expected to see between a 95 and 96 penetration rate amongst adults. There are very few products on the planet that can claim that high of a penetration rate amongst an adult population that measures in the hundreds of millions. And the crazy part is close to 100% of people that use social media once or more a month use more than one social media account. And we can kind of see that because when I asked people like what a lot of social media was, I got a lot of responses where people would kind of throw things out in similar platforms. Like Facebook and Instagram is a really good one because they're owned by the same parent company. So for many people, it makes sense to have multiple platforms because they each do a little bit different things, but also the social media companies understand that they want you involved on their social media apps as much as possible. So they make it very easy if you are going to post something to post it on multiple different sites. If I make a video for TikTok now, I can now cross post that to Instagram, to Facebook, to YouTube very easily within a single click of a button if my accounts are linked. So for many people out there that use social media as forms of engagement, whether it's in their personal life or professional life, it kind of makes sense to be involved in multiple platforms because you're getting many bangs for your buck, where one post can be cross posted across many different sites. Now, social media, as I've has been saying, has been absolutely exploding in popularity. However, we're starting to get a lot of the counter side for social media. And people are starting to really take a look at social media and ask the questions about how harmful and how damaging is social media being to our lives. And the question is also pretty divisive about, is this harming our adult lives? Is it harming our kid lives? Is it harming everybody? And we're slowly starting to get studies that are looking at this more and more and more, and we're starting to get some good data about this as well. One of the reasons why social media is exploding in popularity that I think we are all very familiar with is that social media is a completely free form of entertainment. If you can connect to the internet, you have access to social media. It costs literally nothing to make a YouTube account. It costs nothing to make an Instagram account or a TikTok account. And then once you are on that account, you are able to scroll over and over again and watch countless hours of YouTube videos, of TikTok reels, etc. Anything that you want to take a look at, you can do. And so for many people, it is a really nice and free, easy form of entertainment. So let me ask the question then. When we think about this and we realize that these younger generations are spending more and more of their entertainment time on social media, where over half of Gen Z watches more hours of YouTube than traditional TV or movies or any other streaming services that's out there, if all of this is free, who knows how the social media companies make their money? So let me ask everybody in the group, how do social media companies make their money when we look at this? If it's easy to sign up and it's free and all you need is internet, seems almost too good to be true, right? How are we making the money? These companies are trillion-dollar organizations in some cases. So how are we doing it? Some people are commenting that from influencers selling ads, advertising, we see, and that's the big one. So everybody here is pretty well informed when we're talking about that. Advertising is one of the most popular ways that these companies are going to make money. Some other groups, like YouTube, might sell a premium package that allows you to skip ads and see ad-free content. And that is certainly one way that they can make money. But the majority of time, social media companies make these platforms more accessible because the platform itself is not the product that they are selling. They are selling a advertising platform. And so realistically, if you are not paying for the product, you kind of are the product. And social media makes it easy because they want to keep your time and focused so that they can sell as much ads as possible to the greatest number of eyeballs. And so this is why social media companies have truly endless amount of options to keep you engaged and to keep you watching, because the longer they can capture your attention for, the more of those ads they can sell. And this has really exploded with the global popularity of social media apps. To give an example, and these numbers are like staggering, and some people, including myself, have a really hard time just like wrapping your heads around this. There are over 500 hours of video uploaded to YouTube every single minute of every single day since 2022. So think about that. Literally, in the 15 minutes that we have been having this conversation that we've been looking at, over 7,500 hours of video have been uploaded to YouTube. It is literally impossible to consume all the content that is up there. There are over 16,000 videos that are posted every minute on TikTok. There have been over 40 billion photos shared on Instagram, and there's over 4 billion accounts that have been created on Facebook. It is a staggering amount of reach, and that's why it can be so easy to really have social media pull people in, and it can be hard to get back out because we're not done. When you think about how the way traditional TV and like movies are represented, like when you get to the end of something, it's like, okay, well, now I got to figure out another show to watch. Well, now I got to figure out another movie to watch. When you're on these social media websites, they will just keep feeding you new things after new things after new things until the options are well and truly absolutely endless. And unlike traditional media, social media makes it really easy to participate. Most people that are on this call right now have a smartphone. Okay. We all have a really high tech device in our pocket that has a camera, that has a high definition video that's going to be on it. And most of those phones are also going to have built in either internet access through your cellular network or through connected to Wi Fi. And so it has never been easier in human history to participate and to share your life, to share your experiences, just any thought that could pop in your head. It is so easy to share it on social media. And as I mentioned, it is very easy to share with a click of a button to multiple different platforms. Now, this connectivity can be a really good thing, okay? Because this can allow people of all ages, of all geographical locations, to connect with other people online. It can be a really nice way to connect to long lost friends, old schoolmates that you might have, old coworkers, old teammates that you had. It's so easy to connect with a lot of people. And for many people that might have very niche interests that don't have people in their immediate geographical area to kind of share those interests with them, it can be a lifeline to help people connect with things that just no one else around them cares about, but somebody else that's hundreds of miles away loves that thing just as much as they do. And they can feel this sense of like companionship and connectivity to that where they might have felt adrift. And so that's why I like to remind people social media isn't inherently bad. I want to ask everybody real quick if they want to throw something in the chat. I know there's a lot of negative talks about social media, and don't worry, we're going to get into some of those things as well. But has anybody ever used social media for a good reason or has had like a really positive experience on social media? And it can be something super small. It can be somebody just like was very complimentary of like a photo that you had, or it could be something like huge where social media like really helped you do something for that part. I want to ask if anybody can kind of go in the chat and kind of share anything that they want to where they had like some good experiences with social media or in a way that it helped them out. A lot of people are saying, some people say that they lived out of state for decades. Social media helped me stay connected. I love that. I am somebody that was originally from Chicago. I moved to Virginia. I came back to Michigan where I spent high school and college, then moved to Chicago again, then moved to California. I lived in Texas for a minute. In each one of those places, I met new people. And every single time, it was nice to be able to connect with people from way far away. Because I remember as somebody in my mid 30s growing up, if we can remember the Stone Age, is what it feels like sometimes, you used to have to pay money for long distance phone calls, a lot of money in some cases. And now you can just connect with people extremely easy and reconnected with people. Some people are also talking about how it helps doing from podcasts and love that aspect of it. Other people talking about how to reconnect with old classmates and friends, along with developing my true voice. And I love that comment, along with helping people develop the true voice, because that's something that social media really does provide a good value to. There can be hobbies or personal experiences that you have or parts of your life that many people, whether they're friends or family members, simply put, just do not connect with. And it can make it feel really isolating and feel alone. But when you're on social media and you find a group that also has those shared interests, it can make it feel like you found a community and it can help you kind of develop that true voice as well. And it can do a lot of really positive things. And so I love the fact that a lot of people can have some really great connection to it because, again, social media isn't inherently bad. And a lot of times nowadays, when we talk about social media, we only hear about those negative experiences. We don't hear sometimes about the positives. And it's important to remind ourselves about that because understanding the good aspects of social media can help people understand why it can be hard for many people to give up. And by understanding the differences between what's good and bad about social media, it can actually help us put some boundaries in place to help protect ourselves. So, as we talked about, and as many people mentioned, social media can help people keep connected. I saw somebody talk about how they made a family Facebook page where they were able to connect with people to share big life events, good events, bad events, anything that would happen. And for people that have large families that are spread out that might not be able to see each other on a regular basis, this can help people pretty dramatically. I have one of those groups on Facebook as well. I don't use Facebook a ton, but I still have the account solely for things like that. And so I know when somebody graduated high school. I know when someone moved across the country. I know when somebody's expecting a kid. And this could be a cousin that I haven't connected with in a couple of years, but they're still family. I'd kind of like to still know what's going on. So this is a nice way to help people get connected. And it can provide a lot of opportunities, shared interests, shared hobbies, and can be a really great sense of community. One of the things that I was wondering if anybody was going to type up in the chat, because this is something that I do over and over again, is a lot of times social media can help provide knowledge and support. Now, there's a massive caveat to that. Many times, social media might be providing knowledge and support that isn't always accurate, but there is a lot of accurate and good information out there. For example, I don't have to wear a tie regularly for work. I used to a long time ago, but I've kind of forgotten how to tie a tie on a regular basis if I have to go to like a wedding or like an event where I need to wear one. And so I will regularly go on YouTube and literally look up how to tie a tie just to make sure that I've got everything down. And I will stare at that video and I will watch it and I'll be like, okay. And I'm clearly not the only one because the how to tie a tie video has been viewed over 60 million times. And that can be tremendously beneficial because when I was not living at home and was out like in living in California or in Texas, and I did not have somebody I knew that was like a family member or a close friend living nearby that I could go to ask this, it saved me a lot of embarrassment from having to like try to figure out how to do this myself. And it provided a lot of like really unique tools for it. And there's plenty of people that I have seen and that I've talked with in person that might not have had somebody in their life that taught them how to do some of these things like this. And so for many people that are becoming like home buyers for the first time or are looking at like DIY projects or anything like that, there's a ton of things that people can help out with, whether it's things like fixing a garbage disposal or figuring out what's wrong with your car, or there's a bunch of different options that are available. And so social media can provide a lot of that. Somebody commented in the chat that it's called like YouTube University. And yeah, it's kind of right. Like it allows people to pull all these different areas of expertise. And if you are not close to family or friends that have those, it can be a really good lifesaver. And for people, especially that are visual learners, things like looking up something on YouTube can have a much bigger impact than just reading an article about how to do something online. It can provide a lot of huge help. There's also the ways that people can spread awareness and action through social media. It is absolutely massive for these types of things. Somebody posted in the chat about this. Social media can really help announcing events, and it can help announce a lot of charities too. People might remember like in 2015 there was the ice bucket challenge. I when I was designing this presentation and I put that in there, I kind of forgot for a second that 2015 was now a decade ago. It hurt my soul. It broke my brain a little bit to think about, not gonna lie. But I remembered this like so clearly at the time. And so the fact that it's a decade ago, I was like, ooh, that's not great. But for those that either don't remember, you can Google it. The ice bucket challenge was where people dumped these huge buckets of ice water over their head to raise money for ALS, and they would challenge other people to do the same and like donate money. And since then, they've raised over $220 million for ALS in the last decade, which is a massive thing. And if social media doesn't have that penchant to be able to go viral, we don't see those type of effects as well. Social media has also made it a lot easier for people to access information about other things, whether it's like mental health, connect with mental health professionals, connect with other physical health professionals as well, especially if you're dealing with like a tricky illness or something that you require a lot of support of. There's a lot of different groups. My mom, for example, has been diagnosed with Parkinson's for a number of years, even though she does not like social media and she had fought having a smartphone for forever. She was able to connect with a lot of different like Parkinson's groups all around the country and to share experiences and to get connection and get support. And that's just not something that happens if you're sitting there at home as well without that aspect of social media. So there can be some good things as well. I want to ask everybody, because I saw some people post some things about like podcasts and business. How many people in here, if you don't mind me asking, use social media for like business and promotion? I'm just kind of asking because I saw it kind of pop up in a chat. So there's some people that do that and have some good experiences. See a couple things popping through the chat real quick for that part. Know some people mention things like the podcast. I do. Somebody said, how could you guide us to use social media to turbocharge career, and where can we get a social media education? This is what I want to learn. So there's a lot of really good things. Roderick, I think, we can definitely like talk about some of those things. And I think there's going to be some examples of, really talking about like what aspects of your career are looking to turbocharge and like trying to figure out what aspects of social media education talking about, because social media is a pretty broad topic as we kind of were going over. And so that can be like a big one to kind of look about. Teresa just posted a great comment, which is a good example, where she talks about her podcast is heard in over 10 different countries simply from links being shared by linking your social media accounts. That's a massive one, which basically social media allows unprecedented amount of promotion, not just for yourself, but for any type of product you're trying to do, a podcast that you're looking for, a small business that you're trying to like to start up, a Etsy store. It can be anything. And social media for business is pretty massive. Again, dating myself as a elder millennial coming over here, but many times when small business were getting started, oftentimes it was a huge issue because people did not know how to design a website for themselves. And modifying that website was very tricky. And with the advent of social media, all of a sudden people realize, wait a second, I don't need to go and do something with web design. I don't need to figure out different ways to kind of make sure all of this works together and learn how to code. I can just create a social media profile. And if I create a social media profile, well, that's awesome because I can promote it to people all around the city. I can promote it to people all around the state of Michigan. I can promote it to people all around the country. I can even promote it globally, worldwide if I want to. Because since social media is so ubiquitous, that's going to be where most people are finding us. And like with a lot of things with social media, the huge advantage is that not only are you able to do that, when we're looking at those kinds of things, what we can also do is get feedback directly from potential customers, from potential participants, and they can kind of help us promote those things and promote those brandings for it. Somebody just typed in the chat that I saw, and my name is really blurry as well. People can talk about like, oh, I sell paparazzi jewelry. And that's awesome because if we have it for like social media pages, when somebody buys a piece of your jewelry and they get it and they love it, they can take a picture of themselves wearing it and they can tag you in it. And all of a sudden, it's a way of social media being able to do your own marketing. So, social media can be great for businesses. It's easy to set up, it's easy to manage, it's completely free. You can do targeted ads, you can do a lot of different things. There's a lot of different groups that we have for it. LinkedIn is one of the big kings of social media and how it relates to business, particularly where it's promoting yourself to like find the next job and connect with people and search for job openings. The one thing I do want to mention about LinkedIn is LinkedIn stats are a little weird. At one of their most recent investor meetings, one of the things that came out was that while they have over 900 million users, they only have about a third of those that are actually active users. Many people create a profile because they're looking for a new job at the time. And then once they secure that job, they just stopped going on LinkedIn. So kind of just something that I want to be made people aware of as so the best ways to kind of navigate your time. But social media can be a huge boon for business as well. Now, at the end of the day, whether you're using social media to promote yourself, whether you're using it for entertainment, whether you're using it as a form of community, this is one of those things that I like to remind people, and we kind of touched on this earlier. Social media companies, as a lot of people pointed out, make money explicitly through selling either ads or through selling membership. Okay. So, how do these companies who allow you to sign up for free, who allow you to do all this stuff, how do they generate those trillions of dollars? It's through the ads. And I just like to remind that over and over again. So realistically, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, they're not selling anything. What they are doing is selling ad space. And so in reality, they are not the product that is being bought and consumed. In reality, you are kind of the product that's being bought and consumed. And so, in order to sell all of those ads as much as possible, they need to keep your attention on them as much as they can. Because the longer they can keep you involved and active on their page, the more ads they can show you. The more ads they can show you, the more revenue they can make. And there's a lot of different ways that they are able to do that. They can also, as somebody mentioned in the chat, they can also take your data about what you're interested to. They can sell that to other companies. So companies can use that with their multi-billion-dollar marketing teams to figure out ways to sell you even more stuff and to make you even more targeted things. I think we've all been creeped out at some point in time of our life when you've gone online to like buy a new pair of shoes or a new jacket. And the next thing you know, is you're on a completely different site and all of a sudden an ad for those shoes or that jacket just pops up on the side or it just reminds you of it and you keep seeing it over and over and you're like, that's weird. I was just looking at this pair of Nike shoes on Nike's website, but now if I go on Instagram, every other ad I see is trying to get me to buy those shoes. And it can be weird because it doesn't seem to really know the difference yet about whether I bought those shoes or not because it just keeps showing me over and over again. And so that is really where a lot of this attention economy focuses on, and they want to keep you around as much as possible. When you're looking at this level of attention economy, the number one thing that we want to talk about is simply put the way companies are getting incredibly sophisticated about designing algorithms to keep you involved and to keep you engaged with that platform as much as possible. And it is no wonder that many people can get addicted to social media because you are not just sitting here fighting, one or two things and trying to kind of go about this on your own. You are literally going up against multi-billion to multi-trillion dollar companies that have entire staffs of behavioral health specialists, of psychologists and psychiatrists whose job it is to design the platform to be as addicting as possible so it keeps you as engaged as you possibly can. And there's a bunch of different options for being able to take a look at those things. And so when we look at some of those aspects of it, we have to be aware of some of the things that are specifically done to keep your attention. So one of my favorite ones is that if you ever go on like Instagram or TikTok or even Facebook and you pop on, you will get a notification that pops up that will say so and so commented on your post. And like most human beings, they're going to be like, I wonder what they commented. It might just be a thumbs up or a laughing emoji. It could be some detailed conversation about how they loved the way that you looked at the wedding pictures or whatever. But we have an innate curiosity that if somebody is commenting on something that we post, kind of want to know what it is. Like, I want to know, is it good? Is it bad? Do they agree with me? Do they disagree with me? Like, what was the response that we had for it? And so we click on that. And as soon as we click on it, now we're opening the app. And now we're in the app. And once we're in the app, I'm looking at that comment, whatever it is. And then maybe I'm responding to that comment in general. And now that I've got that app open, I might see what my other notifications are. And if I don't have any notifications, I might scroll for a little bit. And that's the whole point, is companies will do a lot of different things to get you involved and engaged. Because simply put, when that notification pops up, it could just as easily tell you what the comment was that people did. But it doesn't, because that would prevent you from opening up the app and starting to scroll. And so companies do all of these like small little tricks where they focus on keeping things around to keep you engaged. For anyone that uses YouTube now, I want to ask everybody real quick. If you ever use YouTube, what happens at the end of a YouTube video? When your YouTube video that you're done watching, what happens? As soon as that video ends, what happens? Another one comes up. Recommend other videos. Exactly. It just starts playing immediately. Doesn't matter what you're looking on. A lot of times we'll go over to describe, another video starts, it just keeps going. It's just endless. It just continues to go. And by the way, the better that algorithm gets, and based on the video that you just watched, that YouTube will suggest something that they think that you want to watch, because every minute that you spend on that platform, they're building a profile of you that gets more and more accurate. So even if you were just going to watch a video about how to tie a tie or how to fix a garbage disposal, and you get to the end of that video, oftentimes before you can either click off or go for everything, they start playing something else. And because YouTube knows you so well, there's a very good chance that that next video might be something that you're interested in. And if you frequently do not go to that next video, then YouTube will learn from that. And so they'll start sending you shorter videos that pop on, because they'll be like, okay, wait a second. Is another 15, 20-minute video too long? What if we give them a 10-minute video? What if we give them a 5-minute video? What if this topic didn't work before? So let's try this topic. The algorithm and profile they're building of you is constantly learning and constantly evolving to get you to non-stop playing when you go through and watch a YouTube video, or to continuously scroll on the screen over and over again. Here's another really good example of like why this is designed to be addictive. How many people remember back in the day of Instagram and Facebook? Long times ago, Facebook and Instagram were almost explicitly for things that were from your friends and for your family. So when you would scroll on Facebook or Instagram, there would be a line that would pop up that would legitimately say, you are all caught up, or no new posts. And so at that point in time, people would be like, okay, cool. I saw everything my friends and family had posted and that are updated. Awesome. I'm done. So I don't need to go on Instagram anymore. Well, Meta doesn't like that. So what they did is they got rid of it. And now there's no way to know when you're caught up because you can be in the middle of looking at a couple of friends' photos, and then all of a sudden here's a photo of a celebrity. And then here's an advertisement. And then here's another person that you follow. And then here's another random person they go through. And they just keep going. And there's no sense of ever being done. And that has changed dramatically over time because they are trying to specifically design social media to be addictive. It is learning your behavior and is adjusting from it constantly. All these tweaks that they throw out are there. And here's the thing, as long as you're logged on and engaged, you have no say in the matter. Facebook, TikTok, all of them regularly are updating the platform with different things, and you never have an option to opt out. So all of these changes that might be making things worse for you or might be things that are detrimental to your physical or your mental health, you have no say in the matter. As long as you're actively using their sites, you are subject to whatever those changes want to be, whether you love the change or whether you hate the change. And because of the nature of social media designed to be addictive, it can have a massive impact on your life the way any other addictive process could be within your body. When we are looking at social media, it's important to understand exactly why they get you so hooked and why it is so effective with it. A fantastic study that just came out from Harvard last year really looks about different things about how social media actually impacts your brain. And many areas of the brain, specifically your reward center and your chemical messenger pathways that affect decisions and sensations, are impacted by social media. When somebody experiences anything in their life that is rewarding or is pleasurable, or something like using addictive substance, basically your brain starts working to overdrive because your brain wants to feel good. So we start getting some dopamine releases when those things are activated. And so the brain starts to learn this as a reward and starts to associate the activity with positive reinforcement. So if we go online and we're somebody that's looking for some connection, we're looking for some engagement, and we start posting things and we start getting likes and comments on our videos and people start engaging with us, they tell us that we're right, or oh my God, you look so good in that, or this is the best jewelry that I've ever had, or oh my God, your podcast did so much to help me in my life. All these different things, these are positive things that we have. And so our brain learns to love those. And so we want more of them, which means I need to be posting more, which means I'd be engaging more. And if I'm posting and engaging more, it means that I'm using social media more and more and more. And so we can not only be like fighting off some of these own tendencies as well, but it also can be something where we're fighting off our own brain chemistry and sort of our own reward system that we have that's physiologically designed within our body. And so this is something that can be so, so tricky to really get a handle on and to deal with. And we see this all the time. When somebody gets a notification, the brain actually receives a rush of dopamine and sends it along those reward pathways to feel pleasure. And because social media can potentially provide an endless amount of immediate rewards in the form of attention for others for very little effort, the brain rewires itself through this positive reinforcement, making people want likes, they want retweets, they want these reactions, they want that engagement. And so it kind of hardwires our brain into really wanting to continue to engage. And that's why people can find themselves slipping into being on social media way more than we want, because our brain wants those happy chemicals. They want those rewarding centers. And because there's so little effort that can be put in to get them on social media, oh my gosh, it just becomes very, very easy catnip for the brain, and we are absolutely going to be loving it. And that is why we get to some of the major downsides of social media. Because a lot of things that I mentioned that provide us a lot of the benefits, those likes, those comments, those engagements, a lot of times that's going to be positive. If you post a picture of yourself on vacation and everyone's like, oh my God, you guys look so great. You look like you're having so much fun. Oh my God, I'm so jealous. Like all these things, like for that part, those are a lot of things that are going to make you feel good. They're going to make you feel happy with yourself. You're going to be feeling great. However, what if it's the opposite? What if you post a picture of vacation and all of a sudden, because you've opened yourself up to online where anybody can basically comment and talk about your post, what if all of a sudden people start criticizing you? Instead of saying, wow, you look great, it's like, oh my God, you look hideous. What made you want to wear that outfit? oh God, that's where you're staying? That looks like a hellhole. This is awful. And all of a sudden now, those reward pathways that we built up from people wanting to like and engage with that can turn really quickly as well. And we can get into some major downsides to social media. And as somebody just pointed out in the chat that I like to bring up, also, sometimes people just go online to post those things just to post negative reactions because they enjoy doing it. They might not even know a person forever, but they just want to go and just kind of be that person that just rains a lot of negativity on people. And it can be incredibly detrimental to many people's mental health. Ever since social media has exploded, we have seen massive spikes in harassment, bullying, stalking, and doxing online as well. A study that came out last September found that 41% of Americans have experienced some form of online harassment in at least one of six key ways that were measured to determine different levels of harassment. While the overall prevalence of this type of abuse was the same as it was all the way back in 2017, there is a lot of evidence that this level of online harassment has intensified since it begins with. So it might not be more people are experiencing it, but more people are really, really getting more extreme types of harassment as well. For example, people are talking about different forms of severe harassment, such as like physical threats, stalking, sexual harassment, and sustained harassment. Sometimes people could just get somebody to do a drive-by where they just kind of say something incredibly negative at a post. Some people, for whatever reason, will literally just continue to make different accounts and find people and do nothing but post negative things on everything single thing they do, which can have a huge mental effect on someone's life because it's basically a form of online bullying. And this is a massive um, person for that part. Somebody commented as well that I wanted to bring up. I still wonder why social media platform police do not snatch down when somebody is alive during a live or block video from posting videos. And the answer, Teresa, is simply put, they want money. There's no reason for them to ever crack down on anything that ever goes on the platform because when something incredibly controversial like that happens, it increases engagement. People commented on it, they post on it. Even when you are online and you are commenting something saying how awful this is or you should be ashamed of doing it, that is engagement for the person that is posting it. And it's engagement for the platform that makes money off of you being engaged. That's why there is no online policing for any of this stuff. And people can get away with posting just about whatever they want because no one is ever going to block an account. Because if I block an account, that's less ads that I can sell. And if that's less ads that I can sell, that's less money I'm making. So it would be so easy for a lot of social media companies to block accounts that are regularly harassing or doing incredibly negative things by their IP address, because that's something that would affect a lot of people and many people wouldn't know how to get around that and it would require a little bit extra work, but they don't. Because why would they? Because the more that they are online engaging with people and people get mad at what they say and then counteract what they say, it's more encouragement for them to make more money. So there's no reason why any of these tech companies have any desire to ever crack down on any type of negative behavior because all engagement is good engagement that we have for those social media companies. Now, this is bad enough if it was targeting only adults. However, kids in social media is something that is a massive effect. And simply put, we just really don't have a ton of great studies about kids in social media because we're just starting to see the first generations of kids that grew up with social media in their entire lives as prevalent come into high school and college age kids. Social media is incredibly prevalent for teenage kids. Kids age 13 to 17, over 90% of them have social media. 75% report having at least one active social media profile. 51% report visiting a social media site every single day. Every single expert in the field will basically say these numbers are believed to be underreported. I mentioned that a couple weeks ago, I got done speaking to a whole bunch of junior fire cadets that were all age like 13 to 17. And when I kind of said these statistics and mentioned they're underreported, every single person in that room nodded their head and they said, we don't know anybody that doesn't have social media in their school. That's obviously very anecdotal evidence, but it gives a really good idea of like the kids of Detroit because there's about like 30 some kids in there. And they're all like, no, everyone has social media. Even if you are a parent and you think your kid doesn't have social media, they do. And like, I don't know how else I can say that in every different ways. And I've talked to plenty of people, and plenty of parents get really aggressive with me. And they're like, no, 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 I monitor everything. My kids don't have social media. And I'm like, yeah, guess what they do? Because do their friends have social media? Cool. Do they have a smartphone? Awesome. Then what's most likely happening is, even if your kid is worried about you looking at their social media account on their site, they'll go over to their friend's phone, make a social media account through their friend's phone, and when they're hanging out, we'll do social media together on their other phone and their other app. So it's one of those things that parents have this really false sense of security that they're doing something, but kids have always been much better at technology than their parents have, because they just are born it, they're adapted to it. A lot of times we have kids with generations that literally had iPads put in their hands from the time they were about like 2 years old, and have been raised on iPads. So they know how to do everything with technology. And most importantly, they know how to navigate around any type of parental control. They know how to do just about anything. And so, because of all these reasons, social media with kids is becoming a massive problem. It is thought about on average that most kids in the United States that have social media spend about 5 hours a day on social media. And that's an average, by the way. So we're looking at some different extremes on both ends, obviously, but that is a lot of time of the day that kids are spending on social media. And so the question that we have to ask ourselves, and I would love for everybody to type in the chat, if you've got kids that are spending 5 hours a day on social media, whether it's on a phone, a computer, an iPad, whatever, what's missing in those 5 hours? Like, what are kids not getting during that 5 hour of time that they're sitting on a phone, on a computer, on an iPad, just typing into social media? Love to hear some response for that part, because there's a lot of good ones for that. Rest, that's a big one. Sleep can be a huge one, especially like, if kids are trying to sneak social media in, when their parents are asleep. Sometimes kids can stay up really late at night. That way they're doing social media privately. Playing outdoors is a big one, or just kind of moving in general. Social media is a pretty sedentary activity because, you're usually typing or scrolling. So you're usually always like sitting down or laying down. It's hard to kind of walk around or be very active on social media because your eyes are glued to your phone. So physical activity is a huge one. We can see a lot of productivity that comes out as well, because again, you're just doing stuff on social media. Social skills. Some people, obviously, they're good at online social skills, but personal skills are having some huge ones as well. There's often things, as people talk about with other different face-to-face conversations, that are just not getting. There's a whole bunch of ones. And that's why basically, like, there's a whole lot of things that could be missing in those 5 hours that are having other detrimental effects on kids' lives. And when we look at it, this starts really, really young. So I'm not going to go over these things, but there's a ton of statistics that we have on here. By the time that kids are in their 12 to 15 ages years, so again, we're looking at like middle school through like freshman year of high school here, 83% have their own smartphone and over half of their own tablet. When we're looking at stuff, 99% go online. They do it quite a bit. They're using online things for that part. Close to 90% of kids age 12 to 15 use YouTube. They always want to do all these different videos. There's a whole lot of statistics out there about how kids are just getting access to devices with access to social media from a very early age, and they're really taking advantage of it a lot. And the thing is that this is having a very detrimental effect. Now, one of the things that's really tricky is there's a lot of studies out there that are trying to figure out why teen mental health numbers are struggling. It's very easy for us to just be like, social media is the problem. And while there's a lot of things that could be around social media, I do always like to hesitate that while many people look at social media as a main recourse, because of the nature of how long social media has been around, I always like to say that that's sort of like the leading theory, but we don't know exactly what's kind of causing this. One of the things is that as teens are constantly exposed to all different things that are on social media, they can have major, major impacts on teen self-esteem, anxiety, depression. Most kids, when they're looking at photos that are on Instagram, they're on TikTok, they have filters on. They've been airbrushed, they've been edited. So it's very easy for teenagers who could be struggling, going through puberty with their own image and their own, like, the way that they look, to see these images of these basically like perfectly airbrushed human beings. And they look at themselves in the mirror and they go, God, why don't I look that way? And that can have a major impact on a lot of the aspects of their life, because those people that look conventionally attractive, that are using all those things on social media, tend to have the most followers. They tend to have the most engagement. And that can be a major issue with basically setting unrealistic expectations for teens. Teen depression has skyrocketed in the last several years. There's huge studies that come out about every 5 to 10 years, and it shows that teen depression is up 50% from 2010 to 2019. Social media is believed to be a big cause of that. The suicide rate has also rose 48%. From girls aged 10 to 14, the suicide rate rose 131%. And this also just isn't a problem in the US. A lot of times it's easy for us to kind of point our finger at some of the different policies and things that we have going on in the United States and basically look at some of this and just be like, oh, hey, what are we doing here? Like, what's the problem? Is this a US issue? And so when we're looking at this, one of the big things I like to remind people is that this isn't just a problem for the United States. It's something that's also going on in the United Kingdom. It's going on in New Zealand. And it's even going on in the Nordic questions as well. And that's a lot of times a big one because those Nordic countries are often held up as like these pinnacles of like happiness and all these good policies that are help people, but we're seeing the same numbers come in there as well. And that's like a huge thing that we want to be aware of. And so, even with these alarming stats, we need to reset for a second because talking with kids about social media is something that can be very, very difficult. And when asked why, the main reason is a lot of kids want a career in social media. Over 53% of teens say they want to have a career in social media, whether it's they're an influencer, whether it's a content creator, whether they want to make videos, whether they want to edit videos, whatever it is. There's a huge amount of kids that want that career in social media. And I noticed the same thing when I spoke with the junior fire cadets as well. A huge part of them were like, hey, I want to do something with social media to like make money and have that be part of my life. And social media also is the primary means of communication for most teens that are out there because of how easy it is to have conversations away from adults, how easy it is to connect with people without being in person. And so this can make limiting social media really tricky because kids can feel like they're being like left out, like they're being ostracized, like their lives are being ruined. Because if you're taking away that fellow community of their friends from managing social media, it's really difficult. And add in the fact that we talked about earlier that so many kids are using social media as their primary form of entertainment, it can be hard to stop and identify what is basically normal teen behavior with social media addiction. And so this just makes things a huge challenge for a lot of parents and other people in the world is dealing with this social media addiction and trying to get a lot of this stuff sorted. So one of the first things we want to talk about is looking at some of the different sides of social media addiction. And I'm trying to be respectful of time here, so I'm talking a little bit quickly, but don't worry, copies of the presentation will be available and I will be hanging around at the end to still answer for questions. So there are some signs of social media addiction we want to be aware of. One is if you're thinking about social media when you're not using it, that can be a big sign. If you find that you're spending less time doing other activities or hobbies in order to use social media, that's another big warning sign. If you lose track of time while you're using social media. So for example, if you look down the clock and you go like, hey, it's 1 o'clock, and you start scrolling on Instagram or TikTok, and the next thing you know, it's 2:30, and you're like, oh my God, I just spent an hour and a half. I haven't like moved. I haven't done anything in that period of time. That could be a bit of a warning sign. If you're using social media that it gets in the way of different areas of your life, like work, school, or relationships, big one there. Also, if you're feeling anxiety or irritability when you can't access social media, another big warning sign. And then finally, many people nowadays, especially like post COVID, have been using social media as ways to cope with unwanted emotions. And so people just use social media as a way to turn their brain off and to kind of put those anxieties or other feelings off to the side. And they just can scroll over and over and over again. And a lot of these can be some big signs. Again, just because you or somebody that you know might demonstrate a couple of these signs of social media addiction doesn't mean that somebody has a full-blown social media addiction, but it could be something that you should be aware of. And if you want to take action on it, you definitely could. So there are some ways to combat social media addiction. One, everyone's account should be set to private. Unless you are a business or somebody that's like trying to do something like we talked about some people like selling jewelry or selling a podcast or some other different options like that. Big one that we can look at is we want to make sure everything else is set to private as well. So what we want to make sure is that our business page is public, boom, personal account is private. That can avoid a lot of issues. Also, if you find yourself having negative feelings for whatever reason on social media, delete the app. I know it's hard, I know it's tricky, but it can be a huge step because if we delete the app, it provides a barrier for us to go on again. There can also be times where we limit the amount of time that we are apps and monitor screen time. There's a lot of things like that that are built into our devices that can be really easy to use and really easy to process as well. There's also opportunities to do some other things that I find to be really good, like with kids, such as limiting the number or limiting the hours that you spend on social media by spending an hour doing something else for every hour that you spend on social media. You can also limit the number of apps that you go on. If there is an app like YouTube or TikTok that you really, really love, try to get rid of some of the other ones and try to just stick to that other one. You can also speak to some therapists or mental health professionals about this. Again, I represent HMSA, which is your EAP partner, and we are happy to talk about those kinds of things as well. You also shouldn't be using any type of device an hour before bed because it can affect with sleep. You can also switch to dedicated devices like a Kindle. So if you're somebody that's like, you know what, I like really reading on my iPad because it has all my books and it helps my eyes because I can make the font bigger and things like that. Totally okay. Totally get it. I do the same thing. But if you find yourself using that iPad when you're reading to constantly be doing things online or social media, it could be worth switching to like a dedicated device that only lets you read something like a Kindle. And then finally, a big one that I encourage everybody to do is to try a social media detox. Okay. Try a social media detox. In other words, try to see how long you can go without social media. And it might shock you some of those classical signs of addiction that can pop up once you start getting rid of some of that aspect. I'll talk really quickly on some kids and social media addiction because it's a little bit different. With kids, you need to remind people that what they see on social media is an idealized image that might not even be real. With AI getting more and more prevalent each day, there is more and more likely that things that kids are following on online or what they're looking at is completely AI generated, and it's becoming harder and harder to tell. We also want to make sure that we're limiting the amount of screen time for kids, including social media that kids have access to. You also, even if it's uncomfortable, need to have regular discussions with your kids about social media, the images and videos they're seeing, how they feel about what they're exposed to, and try to be as open as understanding as possible. It can be very easy to get really like defensive about, with your kids and not want them to see a lot of stuff, but that can kind of close off a lot of the communication. So instead, like talking to kids about how they feel when they watch certain things or why they're interested in certain things like that can give you a lot more insight than to just kind of like try to ban something. Because we all know if we try to like ban something for kids, it's just going to make them want to do it anymore. Mandate that all kids have their profile set to private. Big one. That way they aren't getting random strangers messaging them or looking at things in their profile or commenting. Privacy should be in utmost demand that you have for that part. And then, if possible, see if you can have final say on what they post or have access to in their profile to view. That can be another step that helps like really, really well with kids. Again, it can provide a lot of parental involvement, and that's a big one. So to wrap things up, and then I kind of want to open some stuff for questions and to kind of throw some comments that I saw that were in the chat as well. Social media can provide a bunch of really, really good benefits to people, but it can also provide a ton of risks to your mental and physical health. If you're able to practice some good social media habits, such as like limiting your screen time and expanding your community outside of the virtual space and being aware of how social media can feel, it can be really key to having some of the healthy relationships with those apps. So I wanted to take some time to answer any questions that we have. I do want to understand that it is 1 o'clock, so if people need to jump off the call, you're more than welcome to. But if anybody wants to hang around and ask a question, you are more than welcome to do so, and I'm happy to answer anything that comes up. I know a lot of people were looking at different things, and there was some conversation in the chat about, how old people should be when they get access to that first smartphone or tablets. In many ways, the smartphone, smart device has kind of become like the new pacifier, where like if parents are out and about and they want kids to be quiet, they just hand the iPad over and kids just stare at, bright colored YouTube videos and Disney Plus shows for like a really long period of time. It might not be the best way, obviously, and things in moderation are okay, but we would want to make sure that we're teaching kids other tools as well. It can be very, very tricky because you don't want to be like judging or trying to shame other parents as well, but it can be a really hard thing to manage, and I totally get where everyone's talking about. Roderick was asking a good question about how can we get education around use, navigation, and career boosts. I think that would make another like really good topic. I think as we're like looking at some things, we've got a lot of good people from the different like group wellness groups and stuff that we have on here. So we can definitely like take that kind of topic for a future training under consideration. and see if that's something that we want to do in the future. So, we always love feedback like that as well. And since I didn't see too many questions come in on the chat, I just wanted to give somebody an opportunity in case somebody had like a longer or a more nuanced question. If anybody wanted to go off mute real quick and just kind of ask any of those questions, if it was something that you're really curious about, but it would take too long to type in the chat, you are more than welcome to do so now.
All right. So sounds like there aren't any other questions. Thank you
Yep.
all so much. Roderick, we are taking these suggestions about future topics under consideration. So thank you so much for that. We appreciate everyone for joining today. Mike, incredible job. Thank you so much. That was great information for all of us. Be on the lookout for additional webinars coming from your Benefits Administration office and team. We appreciate the participation, and Mike, we appreciate you and HMSA's continued partnership. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you, guys. Everyone have a great day.
Bye.